Brownsville will conduct a regular meeting on Wednesday, January 18, 2023 at 5:30
This
p.m.
meeting is being recorded.
at the Brownsville Event Center.
Is he here?
Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Mr. Chairman, it is 5:33. You may call the meeting to order.
I call the meeting to order.
Next item on the agenda is invocation.
Yes. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for putting us together to do what's just and right for the city of Brownsville. Those that are viewing television, hope you're in good health. In your name I pray. Amen.
Order towards the door.
Yeah.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag, pledge allegiance to the one.
Texas, one state, one under God, one indivisible. Next item is public comment. We did not receive any public comment forms. Next item, we have presentation, update, and work sessions. Item number 1, factual and legal updates based on requests provided during any previous meeting as requested by the Charter Review Committee.
Next slide. You can go to the next slide. So as you all are aware, we are on the January 18th meeting date today. We technically have 2 more dates scheduled for meetings. If at the end of the agenda you all decide that they're necessary, we can go forward with those meetings. If you believe that it's not necessary, that's your choice as well. We'll have to wait till the end of the agenda to see if there's anything else that we would have to bring back for the January 25th date. Other than that, factual and legal update, there was nothing for us to bring back for this portion of the meeting. So Yoli, if you could go to the next slide, please. One more slide. So what I went ahead and did is I added your all's PowerPoint presentation to the agenda for tonight. I didn't know if you had the opportunity to see the meeting last night or if all of the members were able to look at the PowerPoint agenda. There's really not much I wanted to go over in this section of the PowerPoint, but if you all wanted to discuss anything, it's up to you.
Not really. I mean, David and I stayed to the end, so we got a chance to look at what was voted. I would say in general, the commission did accept many of the recommendations. In some instances, they changed some things. They had their discussion. So overall, I think it went fairly well. Yeah, so.
So that's basically what most of the rest of the meeting is going to be about, is what was tabled, what was passed, and what was failed. So Yoli, if you could scroll through the whole PowerPoint presentation that the committee gave last night, we should be good on that. Okay, so then this last section of the agenda at the top for work sessions has to do with technical and/or other amendments. Next slide, please. One item that we did not bring before the City Commission last night, but we will take it to the February 7th meeting, was at one of the very first meetings, you all noticed that in Article 6, Section 1, Management, Letter B, it said Article 6, Section 5D of this charter, when in fact that Article 6 should have been Article 4. And you, as a committee, already voted on that and asked for that to be taken to City Commission. So on the February 7th meeting, that is the only technical amendment that we will be asking City Commission to approve. There were no other technical amendments submitted by the city manager's office or our office that we feel is necessary at this point in time to move forward with. I don't know if you all recall, but Mr. Trevino had mentioned about possibly bringing some of the ones forward in regard to 1917, 1918, and for historical purposes and other reasons that we would have to amend different sections. We just decided not to bring those before you today. You can go to the next slide.
Just as a comment, I think we discussed early on, the keeping in mind how this was going to be presented to the voters, right? So I would just add, when this is presented to the commission, just remind them, I'm sure they know, that to keep that in mind, right? So we don't want to throw 30, changes that may cause confusion. I think that the community's feedback was specifically around PUB, so make sure we're clear on those. That way they understand what was accepted or ultimately passed and what they're going to be voting on. So I wouldn't be hurt if this item is not added or doesn't make it through, even though it's just a general correction. The other thing that I didn't mention last night was, I don't think it's an item necessarily for us to vote, but we had discussed them having a permanent charter review committee, right? And part of that, the reasoning for that is, if you're constantly making changes, then you'll have a small number that are going to be voted upon every 2 years, as opposed to trying to cram in, all of the changes because of that opportunity. So I would also highlight that, keeping this in mind, having them consider keeping a review committee going. They can ultimately determine, what they want to put up to vote, but there can be folks looking at the charter itself and making recommendations.
And so what we can do is at maybe not the February 7th meeting, but the following February meeting, is add a separate agenda item that said, based off the recommendation by the Charter Review Committee, for the City Commission to determine if they should go forward with the ad hoc committee like you all had approved. There was one other item unrelated to charter amendments that you all voted on and approved, and I'm failing to remember what it was, that we could bring back at that meeting as well. Do any of you recall what that was? I know I have it written down in my notes. It'll take me 5 minutes to find it, but it was the same day as the vote on the ad hoc committee.
Yeah, I can't recall.
Do you remember who made it?
No.
Yeah, so we'll go through the notes.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I'll look for them and see if I can find them by the end of this meeting. So if you all don't have any other comments in regard to the technical amendments, we can move on to the next slide then, Yoli, please. So then at this point in time, we would be opening up for the first item on the agenda, Yoli, under the public hearing and discussion.
Under the public hearings, okay. Items for public hearings and discussion. Item number 1, public hearings and discussion related to proposed amendments voted on by the City Commission of the City of Brownsville at their last meeting on Tuesday, January 17, 2023, as listed below. Item A, amending Charter Article 5, Section 13, to increase the compensation for the offices of mayor and city commission to an amount the city commission approves based on a study performed by the city on compensation for elected officials to be effective with newly elected officers only.
Okay. So this particular recommendation was tabled. They did take the chart and they're gonna review that and then come back at the February meeting and make possibly a well, not a recommendation, but possibly adopt something for that salary component. And so this one was tabled to February 7th. Next item.
Yep, some of the comments were that there was no overwhelming agreement based on the information you set. But I think the whole idea was just for them to take this opportunity and consider an amount that they felt, appropriate.
Correct, and I think there was an additional comment about it applying to commissioners that are currently there or not applying, and I think there was a few comments that indicated that it might be applicable, but possibly at the next election or the following fiscal year. But again, that's something that they're still considering.
Yeah, and I think the comment there was ultimately the voters are going to decide. It's not them making their own decision. So I think that's somewhat valid. Ultimately, it'll be their decision as a commission to determine how they want to do it. Our recommendation, I think, is the same.
Okay,
I don't know if that was the other motion. I think initially we had for them to consider the compensation, and then there was an additional motion that we might have had at the end of the last hearing for that to be only for newly elected, if that's what you all are referring to,
yes,
right?
yeah. Any other comments? No? Okay.
Letter B, amending Charter Article 5, Section 22 to increase the limitation of a contract with the city manager from 2 years to not exceed 4 years.
So this one passed with a modification. Rather than 4 years in duration, they decided that 3 years in duration would be something that they could all agree on. And so this is what passed as far as a proposition. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay. Number,
Letter C, amending Charter Article 5, Section 22 by removing and/or city attorney and adding Section 23-A, Office of the City Attorney, thereby clarifying the appointment, removal powers, and duties of the city attorney.
so this item was tabled as well. It was well received, in my opinion. Maybe I'm biased, but we did tell them that based on the comments that y'all had at the last meeting regarding this, we did take the language and modified it. And so they tabled it to allow us time to modify it and bring it back before them. So this will come before them at the February 7th meeting as well. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they were open to the idea. They had many of the similar questions that we had and concerns on the specific language. And I think ultimately that's why they tabled it, was just to get an opportunity to fine-tune the language. But as far as the concept, I think it's probably going to pass based on what I saw.
Yep. And then next item.
The next one?
Yes, item D.
Letter D, amending Charter Article 6, Section 1C by replacing majority of the city commission to supermajority.
This item passed.
This was for the appointment?
For the appointment.
Yep.
And that was with the clarification that it was 5-7.
Well, this one.
This one passed as is, and then there was questions later,
the
yeah.
removal was modified.
Yeah, so So, they had already approved this one, but I would just highlight that in all of our discussions, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had the idea that supermajority meant 5 out of 7. So that was the understanding, and the recommendation from us was specific for that. So even though that came up later on the removals, I think they should standardize the appointment and removal to be the same. And I still think supermajority is the correct term, but even if they specified 5 out of 7, I think that'll be fine. You know, the only concern there would be if they ever change, to another number of commissioners, that way it's already there.
What we can do, of course, is, and the commission will say yea or nay, but we can put supermajority and then in parentheses, put that's 2/3. Rather than define it like throughout the charter.
It would have to be for both the appointment.
Correct, yeah. But that was the intent. I mean, supermajority is what was passed here. Then further along the line with removal, of the city commission caused them issue, so they decided, well, we really want it to be a 2/3.
Yeah, so 2/3 is 4.6, which
5
would
out of
be
7.
5 out of 7, yeah.
Correct. Okay, item E.
Letter E, amending Charter Article 6, Section 1C by adding that a city commissioner shall nominate an appointee upon the expiration of a term for a board member, thereby creating places at large A and B in districts 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So this one was passed with a modification. Believe the mayor had some concerns with us calling the places at large A, B, and then places 1, 2, 3, 4. He felt that it gave the illusion that each individual was appointing from their district. And so what the commission decided was to create places 2 through 7, with place 1 being the mayor. So he wouldn't have an appointment, but everybody else would.
And I know there was discussion as to whether that meant it had to be from the precinct. I think you all had informed them that our vote was that it didn't.
Correct.
Is there
Correct.
any change to that language or no?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think we also informed them that that was one of the motions that failed, was having them each appoint from their district. That failed, and then the one that we presented to them was the one that passed. And I think my colleague has a comment.
So when I look at this amendment, the way that it is currently written here, I find it confusing, and I know what's being said. So there might be a better way to go about wording this. I'm not trying to change what you all voted on, but try to put it in perspective as to what Mayor Mendez was saying in regard to the position 1 portion below, and how he stated that a majority of that language was unnecessary at this point in time, because those are no longer even the board members. I'm not sure yet, I haven't sat down to be able to think about it, but that would be one thing that, even though it's passed, we might take back before the commission, just to let you know, to figure out a way to word it better so that it's not as confusing.
And I think when we talked about it, the idea was to do just that, and basically have whatever the top portion is in red, but then position 1 of the board, shall be, and then specifically identify there.
So the concern I have about this one is one subject per proposition. In this case, trying to word the language on the ballot to make it understandable to the voters would be my concern, because we are adding the language of shall nominate an appointee upon the expiration of a term for a board member. So the language will read something along the lines of, shall the city charter, Article 6, Section 1, Management C, be amended to include that the city commissioners shall nominate an appointee upon the expiration of a term for a board member, creating places 2 through 7. It sounds like you're creating these places that are already in existence, right? So the language might be something more along the lines of a term for a board member, amending position 1 to mean, but it becomes longer and longer, the harder and harder I think about it. So
Yeah.
it's going to be,
In the end, it was really getting at the fact that each commissioner should be able to make a nomination, right? So even if it has to be in another area of the article, I think as long as that's done.
so would you guys be concerned with the fact, concerned about it if the language was removed that said, and that we just kind of tailored it to say basically what you just said, Mr. Martinez, to have each commissioner make sure that they have a nomination for positions 1 through 6?
What about an ordinance? Can we just suggest that this be, because the language doesn't have to be removed, or does it, from the charter?
We don't have to remove the language from the charter, but again, an ordinance is set by the city commission and can
Right.
be changed whenever. It's kind of what they
Right.
do now in regard
But
to
that might
policy.
be advantageous for something like this, so that they can have more flexibility.
I mean, that's up to you guys, if that's what you want us to take back to them.
I mean, what does the committee think about this? If we want to focus on having amendments that are easy for the voters to understand, shifting some of these to ordinances might be useful to, help in really just conveying the information and making sure that the ones that are really important get through.
Because the only concern I have is making them more difficult, and then people start voting no.
Right,
Right.
on that, this is the one where I think it would be easier if it read, a city commissioner has the ability to nominate a board member to serve that commissioner's term. I believe is what we got down to.
No, because you have to correspond with the dates for expiration for each board member.
Well,
And so if
Right,
you
which
do-
would be, which would be the term of that elected official.
But they're staggered, so right, then you would have to change position 1, 2, 3, and so that would be a whole nother issue. And so that's why we're trying to, I guess the intent was to basically say each commissioner can nominate, and then each commissioner's nomination would have been associated with one of the specific positions. That way
Correct.
there's no confusion as to whose turn it was.
correct.
And I
And
thought
to-
the idea was to turn that over to you all.
And to try to attach that language to as you can see how long that section is, to attach that to all of the below sections. I mean, it won't be hard to make the amendments. It's the proposition that I'm having trouble coming up with. But we can work on it, and we'll make sure that the intent stays as to what you all are wanting for that portion. I just wanted to let you know that should the language look different at the second reading, which they passed, that's why. That's the concern.
Yeah, and I think from what I gathered, the commission understood what the intent was, and so everyone seems to be on the same page, and if they want to tweak it one way or another, I mean, that's their prerogative, but I think we're all on
Okay.
the same page.
Item F.
Letter F, amending Charter Article 6, Section 1E by replacing unanimous vote with supermajority of the entire city commission.
One more, okay. So this item passed as well. This is the one that was a supermajority, and they wanted 5 of 7. There was discussion about what supermajority meant. So just like with the other one, we will add supermajority and then place 2/3 in quotation, or not quotation, but parentheses to define it. So this one was approved with that minor adjustment.
Good.
Item G,
Letter G, amending Charter Article 6, Section 1E by adding removal of any board member with or without cause with supermajority vote and no annual limits.
so this one was adopted with modifications. So rather than the way the commission had recommended, it will read, removal of board member. The city commission may remove 3 board members in any 12-month period of time with a supermajority, 2/3 vote of the entire city commission. So,
Yep.
H,
Amending Charter Article 6, Section 1E by adding any board member may be removed if he or she violates his or her fiduciary duty.
so I know we just read H, but I'm gonna go through H, I, J, and that's, yeah, those 3. These 3 items failed, and the reason being that commission felt that it was really hard to define what cause is, or what fiduciary duty is, and so they felt that with the other provisions that the commission had, or the committee had recommended, those were sufficient for them, if adopted by the voters, to make an impact on the board, depending on what the reason is for the removal. And so H, I, and J failed.
They also, I think they restricted it to 3 removals?
Correct. 3 in any 12-month period. And the rationale for that is they wanted to preserve the institutional knowledge or the sustainability of the board, keeping in mind that the mayor is one appointment. So then you have 3 additional that would remain and 3 that would roll off if they did remove 3 in 1 year.
And so I heard them discussing it, but I did have a question as to whether you guys, or there's an answer, but there was discussion as to how the mayor, if at all, would be removed.
Yes, so there was a discussion as what happens if the mayor, and this is not necessarily, this is hypothetical, right? I want to make that clear. But let's say the mayor was caught doing something illegal or something that the voter, or maybe the voters didn't like the mayor anymore. The only way to remove that individual would be to have a recall election, which would remove them as mayor, and then automatically remove them from the PUB board. So during that process of canvassing, having the election, et cetera, they would, even though they would still be mayor and they would still be a board member under the charter.
And so would there have to be some sort of language as to the removal of the members to exclude the mayor from that removal process?
No, I think when you harmonize the way the language is right now, it's understood that it's removal of the members that are not the ex officio, because the mayor would be the ex officio.
Yeah, I think part of the other comment was that 3 would also address any block voting that they may have, you know, assuming in a worst-case scenario, the mayor was involved in some kind of block voting from the PUB side. So, so yeah, I mean, he or she or the mayor would have, you know, some level of quote-unquote protection from that perspective, but I think there's other ways that we would be able to remove them should it get to that point.
Correct. Okay. Letter K.
Letter K, amending Charter Article 6, Section 1F by adding the requirement of having quarterly public meetings with the Public Utilities Board where the Brownsville PUB shall present specific topics on water, sewer, electrical, finance, and general business.
This one passed. It didn't have any modifications. There was a few questions about if quarterly meetings had to be at a city commission meeting, or it could be a joint meeting, or maybe city commission was invited over to PUB's meeting. But this particular item, the way the board recommended, did pass. And then my colleague has a comment about the location of the language.
So when I was researching the charter, I think this section under vacancies is not the proper place to probably have it located. If we look under section 4, letter D, miscellaneous, under Article 6, it talks about current meetings being addressed. I don't know if you all have a copy of your charter still here with you. I know I have mine somewhere. But it basically talks about when the regular meetings must be held and things along those lines. So that's where, at the next February 7th meeting, that language will also be tweaked a little bit to have it adjusted to that section and not to have it under the management portion of the charter.
Right, I agree, section 4F.
And I think that's how it was passed, right? You brought that up last night?
I did bring it up last night, but because of the way it was worded on the agenda to be located under management, section 1, management F, that's where it passed for that motion. I did address it with the commission. I don't think they'll have any issues moving it to a proper place to put it before the board, or before the voters. I don't think that will be an issue, but I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that that was going on, that was going to be the recommendation.
Letter L.
Letter L, amending Charter Article 6, Section 1F by adding the requirement that Brownsville PUB present the budget for clarification and acknowledgement of receipt of the report, not to be construed as approving the budget.
So this item did pass with no changes, and I believe this one will also be moved to 4F, which is something that the commission was okay with.
I agree with that.
Okay, letter M.
Letter M, amending Charter Article 6, Section 1F by removing for a period of 120 days to 4 absences in a calendar year, unless that member shall have been granted leave of absence by the unanimous vote of the remaining members of the board, be considered to have vacated that member's office as a member of the board.
So this item did pass. They did have a modification of adding the word regular meeting. The mayor had indicated that over the course, because of this particular matter with the Tenasco report, they've had several special meetings, and so if you consider all those in that particular year where they actually have to meet in a special meeting, then it would make it very difficult for them to attend. They would have to be excused, or otherwise they would be vacating the office by operation of the charter. And so they added the word regular. And if there's no questions on this particular subsection M, we do have a public hearing if you want to open it, see if there's anybody from the public that wants to speak. And then if there's none, close it.
Move to open public hearing.
Second? All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It seems like we have no public comments.
Yeah. Guess
Move to close.
well, I don't know if I have to wait, but I think it's, just as a comment right now that we've gone through them all, I feel that, that overall it went pretty well, right? So we did address the removal, which I think was one of the bigger ones from the community. So I think that worked out. We also included, obviously, the appointments and just cleaning that up a little bit more. I think the other ones were related to how many can be removed. That was also something that the community was pushing for, so I think that also went pretty well based on their feedback. And I think the communication as well. We formalized how many meetings, what topics, so on, and then just holding people accountable is as far as the missed meetings. So I think overall it went pretty well, really. We did do a lot of discussions here, a lot of back and forth, and I know not all of us agreed on everything, but ultimately I feel that, I hope that the community feels that their feedback was taken into consideration, and hopefully they can vote on it. It's going to be on their court now, so.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay. I think you had a motion to
Motion to close?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The ayes have it.
Item number 6, items for individual considerations. Item number 1, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to term limits of the mayor and city commissioners.
Okay, this is the one where I asked if, when we discussed it at the last committee, if it was 2-2-2. I believe, and that's what I remember prior to going to the city.
Well, you all did discuss it being 2-2-2, and I think there were 2 votes for, and the rest were just to make it all commissioners to be 2, and then the mayor to be 2. I
Okay.
mean, the terms 4 and 4.
Okay.
But
I move,
4-year, 2-year term
correct,
limits.
per,
Sorry.
where, I believe in the discussion, it was 2 per district commissioner, 2 at large, and 2 for the mayor. Whereas that way it would let the district commissioners move on to at large or to become mayor.
Right, I 100% agree with you that that conversation took place.
Yeah.
I don't recall that being the vote of the committee to
That-
take it to.
That when we took it to? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, that's up to you all today, if you want to take that back.
So what's the current state?
2-2. It's commissioners, district commissioners and at-large have 2 terms, and the mayor has 2 terms. And the way we had discussed it at the last committee, it was you could go 2 terms for district, and then once you say you're a district commissioner, then you could go to at-large and serve 2 terms there, and then from there go to mayor to 2 terms.
So one person could be in for how long?
Total of 6 terms.
So
Or
you could
yeah.
have a total of 6 terms
6
with,
terms.
with each term being 4 years.
Correct. Which would, but in a different locale. It
I
would-
mean, you don't have to start at district and then go at large. You could
No.
mix them up, but you would be maxed out at 2 terms for each one of those different positions on the commission.
That's the current state.
No.
No, the current
That
is-
was the proposed, the current state is commissioners at large and district are only allowed 2 4-year terms. And then the mayor 2 terms, 4 years.
Okay. Yeah, I think 24 years, potential may be a little
Well,
too much.
also, I don't think we have enough people that are politically engaged of becoming a commissioner, or, because sometimes we may have someone that is a really good commissioner that after their 2 terms, they can only go to mayor.
Yeah, I would think if we ever change the structure, with a strong mayor, then I would be open to having that, because then it would lend itself to be like a career politician in the true sense of the word, where you're getting paid and, leading the city. And ultimately, the voters would make that decision.
Yeah, and it'll come back later. I move to close this discussion and just drop it on the floor.
Item number 2, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to technical and/or other amendments recommended by the city manager or city attorney.
So as we said in the presentation, we are taking the 1 to them. we already have on the ballot, possibly, there's about, I counted 5-ish. There's a few that are tabled that they might consider, so at the end, we might have 8 propositions. Adding any more, we're worried that it might confuse the voters, but if the charter becomes an ad hoc that meets regularly, then we would have you all come back and of course look at the technical issues like the references that we have that are archaic. But with that said, I did want to say, and I meant to say this earlier, but I did want to say that I think y'all have done a great job. Y'all have taking time away from your families and work for the last, I don't know how many meetings. It feels like forever, but it's been several meetings every Wednesday, right? And Wednesdays are church day. And so you all have made that sacrifice for the city. And so with what we saw last night, with the recommendations going before the commission, I think it's admirable that you all have done that much as far as recommendations in a short period of time, where 2 years ago you had a lot longer period. And a lot of individuals didn't think that this could be accomplished in such a short time. Of course, we still have some drafting to do and final consideration by the commission, but I did want to say that I've done charters in other cities, and this is the first time I've seen it done in a 2-month period.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we really appreciate your help as well. We could not have been able to do it without you. You were able to provide us research in a very short amount of time. And a lot of the decisions that we made were because of the information that you provided. So thank you.
And also to everyone from
PUB.
PUB that has come to our meetings to help us out with any type of information that we needed on hand, which we didn't have to wait for. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
And all city staff for putting up with us.
Yeah, and also, I mean, in the end, I think all of us were concerned, given the situation and rhetoric and information and emotion, around some of the current events. But we all took it serious for the community, and I hope that I'm also happy that they participated as well in their ways. And yeah, I hope they're happy with some of the results. You can't make everyone happy, of course, but I feel that we did address a lot of the main concerns. So we should probably go celebrate somewhere
No, that would still be a quorum.
after we close. After we close.
Go ahead, Yoli, last item.
Item number 3, request for future agenda items.
Wait, do we have a comment?
Hold on.
I just want to say thank you all for serving here. I mean, taking time away from all of your lives and busyness, and it's really been an honor getting to know you this way. I know that us being here and being part of this process helps us to be part of the committee and engage. That way we hear firsthand why the decisions were made, and also we look forward to working with the City Commission in the future and whatever information they need to provide for us going on here. For those of you who, I guess, are watching there, I'm Marilyn Gilbert. I'm the interim general manager for the Brownsville Public Utilities Board, and I have here some very dedicated staff along with me that have been part of this meeting, and also some that are watching online. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 3, request for future agenda items.
So if you guys don't have any future agenda items, then more than likely this is the last meeting, but that's up to you all.
So with that said, here, any in the committee feel that we need to come back for the last 2 meetings, being that everything, and all we're waiting for is the new items to be written up and presented to the City Commission at, what's the date on that one, February 7th? Yeah, so.
I don't think it needs to be an item, but the request, I guess that could be a comment, right? Just changing it from an ad hoc to a standing committee. I don't think we need a whole item around that. but if they, if the commission can be aware of that, I think it would be good.
And the more I sat here and thought about it, I was thinking that maybe that would be a better opportunity to put it on the February 7th agenda as well. So then we can make discussion as to if they decide not to move forward with some of the items that are tabled, or with the, the technical language, we can let them know that one of the recommendations brought forth by your guys' votes was to have a standing committee. And just so that you know, I did find what the other item was, and it was to create the subcommittee.
Yep, yep. Yeah, and I think the phrase was evolution, not revolution, right? So if this committee exists, and even if they're just approving, 1 or 2 items every 2 years, I think it would be less pressure in getting everything, when it is brought up to the voters. And the voters also can be aware that it's an item, an ongoing item, for them to consider and vote, and a process can be established as far as communicating, because one is what we vote, and then the other is what's communicated to the community. So I think it would lend itself to establish that ongoing process, and it would be beneficial really to everyone. It's a win-win for the city and the community.
And just to also, in closure, depending on what the city commission decides as far as it being a standing committee, please know, I know that y'all's service might end pretty soon, but please know that we are here to assist you all in any way, if there's any questions that come up. And then especially if the committee gets established as a standing committee, we'll be happy to continue serving.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be us on the committee, but somebody else can take a stab at reviewing all this stuff.
Okay. So I make the motion of the remaining 2 meetings to be closed.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Enjoy your Wednesdays, ladies.
Don't forget to adjourn.
To
Oh,
adjourn.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed can stay here.
It is 6:20, meeting has ended.